Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you here for the 23rd annual Garden State Film Festival kickoff. From March 27th through March 30th, you can enjoy over 200 incredible films from 14 different countries across 9 venues throughout Asbury Park and Cranford, New Jersey. I am your host, Paige Ryans, and today I am joined with Enter Combat. Wonderful film. Hi, Tim. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? Thanks
Good.
for
Great to have you
having me
here.
today.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. So I guess we can start with, introduce yourself and your role with the film.
Sure. So my name is Tim Preston. I am the writer and director of Enter Combat, as well as many other hats, as many of my crew were. Uh, it was really a passion project for myself and for a lot of my fellows that worked on it. So we're all just really happy that we get to be part of this festival and
Yeah,
have it screened.
we're great to have you a part of the festival. So thank you so much again. So tell us a little bit about Enter Combat.
Sure. So Enter Combat is very much a love letter to D&D. It is also kind of an experience piece about D&D that is discussing when certain games might run into hurdles or situations when a player might just quite not be getting the table etiquette that you should normally follow when playing. Um, the project kind of came about as like a passion piece for me, and it was right around the time that the industry was facing a lot of strikes, with the writer strikes and the actor strikes. Myself and a lot of my friends, we found ourselves with our jobs on hold because a lot of us work in the industry. And on my commutes back and forth from work, I was thinking about what I was going to do during the downtime, what I was going to do to keep myself creatively sane during that period. Uh, and I just happened upon this script during that time frame, and I fell in love with it instantly. I started reaching out to all my friends and was like, "Guys, I have this project idea. I wrote this script on a happenstance on a train ride one day. Like, do you like it? Do you think you'd be want to be part of it?" And I was fortunate that I had a lot of filmmakers in my circle that were very interested in the idea, and we all came together and made something that I personally am really proud of and really happy with.
Absolutely. That's a great, and just to hear the story of just like how that came about, and just finding finding that good through that, tough time of just, figuring out what next. And I think that this is a great thing that came out of it, a great project that came out of work on it. And I know you said like your inspiration was it's inspired by Dungeon and Dragons. So tell me a little bit about that. Like walk me through that step process of just like, have you always enjoyed like Dungeons and Dragons? Like what kind of drew you to that, going in that direction with the project?
Sure. So I've always enjoyed fantasy. That's sort of been like a really deep-hearted passion of mine. One of my favorite films starting out in this whole filmmaking space was when I first watched Pirates of the Caribbean,
Mhm.
and I was kind of like in love with the like high energy, high fantasy of that world.
Yeah.
Uh, and it wasn't until actually recently that I sort of found D&D and started playing Dungeons and Dragons, and I started to like learn about the game mechanics and what it takes to run the games as a dungeon master versus as a player, and how you go about building a character versus how you go about building like NPCs or the big bad villains and things like that. Um, and it was really sort of a process of finding this creative outlet in this creative circle that sparked a lot of ideas for me and a lot of passion for me in the writing side of things and in the creation side of things. Um, and bringing that to film, the logic behind it was like I would sit there in a lot of the D&D games that my friends and I would play, and I'd think to myself, wow, these would transition to film so well. Like these would be such cool like movies, TV shows, concepts, like and it would be so fun to create these stories.
Mhm.
Um, and obviously there's plenty of content out now that features that. You've got the Honor Among Thieves movie, you've got the Legends of Vox Machina from Critical Role, and so there's tons of content that focuses on D&D. Uh, but all of it is the actual fantasy side. And for me, I was like, well, what would happen if there was a short or a project that was focused on the craft of it? in the process of making these stories while also being around a table in a living room somewhere in New Jersey.
Yeah. I think that's also, the fun part about just like fantasy is that you can have just so much fun with it. And just, I think that it's a really strong and very, smart direction that for you to go, like the process of like making this craft and everything like that. And I can imagine that the process of, making it, like the filming making process, was also just enjoyable and fun. So
Oh
tell me
yeah.
about that. Tell me about.
Yeah, it was a blast. It was a sprint. We did it in 2 days. The whole film in 2 days. We did one location per day, which was, it was a lot of fun, but it was also a lot of locked in stress. Like we have to get
Yeah.
this thing done now. We have to, get our shots on time. Our
Mhm.
AD Curtis Finkst was amazing at keeping me on schedule. Honestly, because I, as a director, I try to be respectful of the schedule and the time, but sometimes I'll be lost in the moment, and I'm just like, "Come on, let's do it. Let's make this happen. Let's
Yeah.
play around and have fun."
Yeah.
But it was super cool. I'm a big nerd when it comes to like cool costume pieces and set
Mhm.
pieces and props and stuff. So being able to play around with like chainmail and plate armor and like elf ears and like all these different fun nerdy things, I was like, yes, this is like
Yeah.
the prime creativity for me. Um,
Absolutely.
and my crew was incredible. Like I genuinely, like, this would not have happened without them, because there were so many people on my team that brought in like elements to it that I would have never even thought of. Like Emily Finn, our costume designer, was able to handcraft the markings and the runes on one of the characters' hands. Like our DP, Nate Finkst, he brought in like almost a ton, like all of our camera equipment, basically, like just as a courtesy, because he was that into the project. So I'm very grateful for every single one of those guys. My creative partners, Christian Cortez and Ken Dwyer, they're two of my best friends. They've been on my side of the filmmaking world for I think it's like 10 or 11 years now. It's crazy.
Yeah.
We've been making a lot of content together, and they were very quick to jump onto it. So working with all of them in a time where we all needed the creative release was really great. Um, and then the actual filmmaking like steps were was really good too. That first day was a little easier because we were inside of an apartment. We were nice and cozy interior shots the entire time. We only had one scene exterior on day one, and it was the ending of the film,
Yeah.
ironically enough. But the second day was when it got a little bit more challenging because we were in the forest and there was a lot of variance to the day. It rained for a little bit, so we had to deal with some rain. We had to deal with, and this was probably the weirdest thing. We were mid take for one of our last shots of the day, uh, and a church nearby started having its like 6 o'clock bells going off. So we're
Yeah.
like sitting there mid take, our actors like getting in the heat of passion for the fight. He's like getting ready to give his monologue, and then all of a sudden you just hear ding 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 ding, and we're like sitting there waiting, and
Yeah.
then it stopped, and we were like, okay, I think we can go back in, and we
Yeah.
go back in for another take, and right as he was about to deliver the line, bing ding,
Start
and
back
we were
up
like,
again.
oh my god. And funny enough, a buddy of mine was like, "You know what? I'm gonna try something." And he
Yeah.
takes a phone and he calls the church, and he's like, "Guys, we're filming a short film
Yeah.
over here. Would
Can
you?
you just turn down the bells a
Do you
little
think we'll
bit?
turn them down?" And they were like, "We're a church. No." but but it was
I
just such
guess
a
that's, yeah.
goofy way
No,
to
I
end
was
the
just gonna
day.
say that's all a part of the process. Like that's just learning how to make do and just it's a part of the process of just,
It's
things
one of my
happen.
favorites. It's one of my
Yeah.
favorite processes.
Yeah.
Honestly, like I as a kid I played baseball, and there was always the advice they'd give you when you were at the plate to like keep your shoulder in on the curveballs and
Mhm.
stay on them. And I just kind of love that carrying over into the film world because there's
Yeah.
so many curveballs in this industry and in this process. So like I love when you get something like that and you're like, crap, how do we do this?
Now.
How do we figure this out?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's great. Do we think any of the bells made it into the film? Like, should we be on the lookout for
The
them?
The bells know. The bells know. There are some funny little improvised little bloopers or things that did make it into the film.
Mhm.
One of my favorites being that there's a walking sequence in the fantasy side of the project where our lead actor Austin comes walking in, and there's this, like, we set it up where there's this like big tree that fell over into the path, and the idea is like each player does like a skill check to see if they can get over the tree easily. And so you see all these characters walking up, and the first three easily walk over it in their own ways and their own styles of doing things. And he comes walking over, and he's like, "I'm going to kick it out of the way," and just like foot plants the tree, and you see this whole thing shake and not move. And then he's like, "Ugh," and then climbs over the top. It's like my favorite little thing he does. He does a
Yeah,
lot of stuff like that. Our lead Austin was incredible with improving like fun little quirky things here and there.
yeah, yes.
Uh,
That's awesome. No, I definitely, and I kind of, the improv is definitely one of the things I was gonna mention about, because it's like it's one of those subtle improv things where it's like you don't really, it's not super obvious, but it just it works. It
yeah.
works so well. So that's awesome. And um, what did you like? Was there anything that you learned about yourself, maybe Dungeon Dragons, maybe your filmmaking style during this process?
Um, during the whole thing, because I've jumped around role wise in the industry, and I've done a lot of different things. I've produced short films, I've directed short films, written them, and then I've worked on like crews in different like positions. Um, I think this process really made it clear and apparent to me that when I'm at the helm and I'm able to like write and direct, I'm definitely the most like at home and comfortable. I feel like a lot of times you find that stress of other people's projects. You're like, I want to make sure that this is great. I want to make sure it's good, and you're kind of dialed in at 11 the whole time.
Right.
Whereas in the role of the writing directing spot, it's like I obviously am still trying to be at 11 and make this thing the best it can be.
For sure.
But there's also a level of joy that I think kind of almost acts as a suppressant to that stress and makes it more like homey for me.
Mhm.
So that was something I think I learned about myself a little bit in the process. Another thing I learned is what is involved in like the difference of visual versus practical effects.
Mhm.
Because we did a lot of both in this. I'm always a proponent for practical effects. I love doing practical whenever I can.
Mhm.
And even if it does have to be a digital, I like to enhance it with practical work. So, like, for example, um, if it's like a spell or there's like a lightsaber, for example, um, I like to have a blade that actually glows that color on set. So that way, when you put the digital light on in post, there's a natural kind of like blue tint on the face and things of that nature. Because
Yeah.
I always am the first one to point out when a VFX
Yeah.
project or like a CGI shot looks like corny or like not
Yeah.
not realistic. Like it's my curse for being into movies for so long. I'm like that could be better. That could be
Mhm, mhm.
so.
It's also a blessing, though. I think it's a blessing to just like put that much detail and thought into your work and project, because you know kind of like from your eyes like what your vision is for it. So I think it's definitely something that's beneficial, and it definitely, that's like a nice little fun tidbit, because it works, it just works out, and it makes it add, the fantasy, it adds to just like the fun and the enjoyment in it. So I
Yeah.
think that's very awesome.
Yeah, I'm very happy with how it all kind of paired with that idea.
Mhm.
And for me, balancing the fantasy and the real world in the project was an interesting take because there's a lot of discussion on like, oh well, the real world we want to feel more grounded and more realistic, so maybe we shoot more on like tripod and maybe we stay more like locked in. Whereas in the fantasy world, we're like on a dolly system and we're open floating through the air and like going handheld in spots and trying to make it feel a little bit more ethereal. So,
Mhm. Yeah.
understanding that balance and finding creative ways to sort of like walk that line was definitely an interesting process for me.
Mhm.
But something that was really also enjoyable about the whole experience. So, very
That's
happy
awesome.
with it all the way around.
Yes, Absolutely, absolutely. You should be, because it really is. It turned out to be like a really great film, and I think that the audience is in for a treat when they screen your film. So, do you see this film, or kind of like what are your next steps after after this film? Like, are you working on anything else? Any future plans or goals that you hope to do
Yeah,
in
yeah.
filmmaking?
I mean, obviously, I'm gonna keep making content. That's the first thing.
Yeah.
I'm already writing a handful of new short film ideas. I have feature film script in the works. I have one or two like series concepts that I've drafted, and I think I have a pilot for one finished or in like the first draft phase. So doing a lot of writing, a lot of creative development. Um, and balancing it in between work because thankfully the film business has started to come back, and I've been fortunate enough to retain some work out in the city. So I've been working on a show out there, and then making the most of my time when I'm not on the job, creatively working.
Yeah.
The goal, for me, would be to maybe target like I don't know, a multi-festival run with the thing, with a film that I make. I'm not sure what that would look like, but I just my goal for me is just to make more content. That's my heart is in the story, and so I just want to make more stories and share them with people, and maybe find some sort of thread line where we can have a little circle of community around a film idea that I have and get
Yeah.
nerdy about it. Because for me, that's when it's the most fun is when you can just like invest in a story and dissect it with people and have them be like, well, why does this character do this?
Mhm.
They seem like the kind of person that would go over this route, and it's like, well, funny you say that, and then you get into that kind of
Funny you
uh
mention it.
like I'm a big nerd, comic book nerd, superhero nerd, anime
Mhm.
nerd. So like, most of my free time is chatting about like lore and backstory and all that stuff. And so my hope would be to one day make something that allows me to have that conversation with people, but from my own inner creative brain.
For sure, absolutely, and I think that's where you kind of draw more inspiration from. It's just like that community and connecting with other people that can offer just like a variety of perspectives and you know thoughts and
Mm,
everything like that. So it helps it all come together. So that's awesome. That's
yeah.
awesome. And you mentioned like the film festival run. So I'm curious to know like what drew you to submit to the Garden State Film Festival.
Yeah. So funny enough, when I was in high school, I actually had a film play here at the Garden State Film Festival. I think it was the 14th annual Garden State Film Festival. I had a student film called The Devil's Tree that played, and it actually won. I think it was best student homegrown narrative at that festival, which was really cool.
Awesome.
So I've known about Garden State for a while. I've had the pleasure of being there for the 14th annual one. So I know you guys do incredible stuff with the Garden State Film Festival. I've chirped about it to all of my friends and pushed it around to a lot of places because I think that
Yeah.
it's an incredible thing to have, and particularly if you're a local, because it's helping to kind of cultivate that art scene that uh, we love and we want to support every single day. So
Absolutely.
um, that's the draw for me. It's a local heart staple for me, and so
Yeah.
there's no way I wasn't going to.
Yeah, that's awesome, and we're coming close to 10 years that you submitted and won
Yeah,
New
yeah.
Jersey.
Oof.
That's awesome. I know.
Isn't that wild?
I know. Maybe I shouldn't have 10 years. But that's awesome. It's a full circle moment. So it's great to have you back here again with another one of your films in the festival. So will you be joining us this year?
Yeah, I definitely will be.
Alrighty.
I know I'm going to be in person at the screening on the 29th. So hopefully I'll see some folks there and we'll be able to chit chat. And I'll probably be at a couple of the other filmmaker events too.
Great.
I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. Looking forward to having you here. Seriously. Again, so as you can check out Enter Combat on Saturday, March 29th at the Jersey Shore Art Center. It's block 9 and it's from 12 to 1:45 p.m. Um, thank you so much again, Tim. Like
Yeah.
this is really great. It was really great talking to you. Really great to have you here, and we're excited to have you again this year at the festival. You know, Anything else
Yeah.
you want to leave the audience with? Um,
Well, thank you for having me and taking the time to chat. And I hope everyone comes out to see the film, and maybe it'll inspire you to buy some dice and play some D&D. Who
There
knows?
you go. And just a reminder, it's just to kind of, you have a local church by, just to make sure that they just dim those bells.
Do your tech scouts. Do a sound scout to make sure
Yeah.
that the sound is good. Yeah.
Makes it sound is good. But and then if we're, and we always just learn to pivot. So
Yeah.
but
Like
be
Ross and
sure to get your
Friends, always
tickets.
pivot.
Always pivot. That's a part of the game, right? It's a natural thing. So be sure to get your tickets at gsff.org/tickets. And once again, congratulations, Tim. So excited to see you. Looking forward to seeing you at the festival.
Thank you
Um,
so much. I'm excited to be there.
yes, thank you for being here. So
Mm.
have a good one, all right? And
You
take
too.
care.